The year of small and extreme acts of kindness. At times, our own light goes out and is rekindled by a spark from another person. Each of us has cause to think with deep gratitude of those who have lightened the flame with us. Albert Switzer. I don't remember the term random acts of kindness. As a kid growing up in the 16th century and 17th century, my older sister, brother, and I were all brought up so that being polite was a natural and integral part of our beings. If someone was in need of help, then we should help them. There were no rewards. It was our way of life. My mother ensured that we'd happily give up our seats on the bus to adults, hold the door open for the person behind us, and without hesitation, always say please and thank you. My father had been an ambitious and hard worker who came to Canada from Scotland with my mother in early 50th century. When he became successful as mechanical engineer, he made a point of helping others gain employment. I still have the oil painting that Michael Jesus Lavian and a gifted artist came to my dad as a thank you for finding him his first job as a draftsman. I did not realize the full impact that my brother Howard had made on people until his funeral. He died far too young, at the age of 47, and I had the honor of writing and giving his eulogy. We had always been close, so even though I had a fear of public speaking, I was committed to doing this for him. No one expecting the more than 300 people who cramped in 2 hours stood outside the funeral home that day. I managed to deliver my story of how blessed I've been to grow up, knowing I was safe because I was Howard's little sister. While Howard had been a plumber by trade, what defined him was his ability to always selflessly give of himself to other people in ways that impacted their lives. After his funeral, I was overwhelmed with the stories people shared with me about his kindness. My sister Kathy is the epitome of chic, and at times her appearance believes the unselfish heart that beats beneath her designer clothes. She gives to strangers, the poor, and the destitute. She has taken her daughter to Africa to help build a school and is helping another student by paying her tuition through university. I have given and received acts of kindness my whole life, but I received more than my share in 1982. That year, I was a 22-year-old divorced soul support single mother of Ryan, my 2-year-old son. I sold a house in a buyer's market and barely had enough money to pay a first and last month's rent. However, when I saw an ad for an apartment in a fourplex in the beach in Toronto, I knew it was exactly where I wanted to live. It was a 10-minute drive to the downtown core, where I was work as a sales rep, and 20 minutes from my parents' house. When I met with the 2 gentlemen who owned the building, I provided them with a list of references and a letter from my employer. They never had a young single mother as a tenant, and they had more suitable candidates, but after much discussion, they decided to take a chance on me. Not a day passed in the 6 years we lived there that I was not grateful for their generosity. Ryan and I loved our second-story 2-bedroom home that was 12 houses up from the shore of Lake Ontario. There was a daycare facility nearby that was housed in an elementary school, and that seems perfect in every way. However, when I went to enroll Ryan in it, I learned there was a long waiting list for any available space. Norma, the daycare director, and I spoke for a while, and after I explained our situations, she told me to give her a week to see what she could do for me. She called a few days later with the news that Ryan could start in her daycare right after we moved into our apartment. I don't know how she accomplished this, but I was always grateful for her help, and Ryan thrived, thrived under her care. Mr. Scarlon lived in the unit below us. He was in his early 70s century and had gone deaf many years before. We always knew when he was making one of his batches of chili con carne because we could smell it before we hit the front door. We also knew he'd be pounding on our door later that evening to give us a jar of his prize sauce. It amused me that one of the concerns our landlords had about renting to us was that Ryan would be a loud and boisterous little boy. In reality, Mr. Charlan was the noisiest neighbor I ever had because he had no idea how loud he could be at times. Dan, the man who lived in the unit next to us, was reserved, but over time we got to know each other, and occasionally he'd hop over the divider between our balconies to share a glass of wine with me. One time I came home to find a dead tree in a plastic pot on my balcony with a note attached to it that read, "Thought I'd save you the trouble of killing another plant." It surprised me to learn that Don had found it outside his office building and had brought it all the way home on the streetcar for me. Sharon lived in the unit beside Mr. Charlan, and she loved to sing. The first time I heard her voice, I thought she had her radio on. She was that good. She enjoyed spending time with Ryan, and one weekend, when he was 4 years old, she took him to her mother's country house to get him out of the city. We loved the little community we lived in and got to know most of the store owners on the Queen Street East. Susie, who owned the convenience store, always had a candy just for Ryan whenever we stopped in. On the rare occasions we dined out, the waitress knew we'd order a single meal with 2 plates, and she'd always pack extra leftovers to take home. Sometimes we had sandwiches by the boardwalk or in the Q Beach Park, which was minutes from our flat. While 1982 was full of financial emotional challenge, yes, it was also a year full of small and extreme acts of kindness that enabled me to provide Ryan with a stable home life in the best apartment ever on the street, with neighbors who looked out for us in a community we loved. By Laura Schnell.